Good morning. I'm sorry I have to speak in English and cannot address you in Spanish, but I hope the translation will be helpful. It's always a great pleasure to be here in Spain, not the least because it's such a successful part of Triodos Bank, and I keep congratulating my colleagues here by the results they are making every year. 38% growth, 38%. It's an amazing number. Now 150,000 clients. That was what we did not expect actually when we decided together with the group here in Spain to start a branch in Spain. We thought we are going to try something in Spain, we'll see what it is. We don't know Spain that well, but we got to know it quite well and it has been a real success. And I would really like to congratulate our colleagues with the results. But also the group as a whole has done relatively well. Last year we had 22% growth, and when I tell those numbers to my colleagues in other banks, they are amazed. They say, well, today we're talking about decrease in banking activities, not in increase. So there must be something good what you're doing. So they're more and more interested in the Triodos Bank model and want to learn from it. But it's not so easy to learn as a mainstream banker from a model like Triodos, because it's so fundamental different from what other banks are trying to do today, still trying to do. And I think that is something we have to realize, that we are very open, we share our knowledge, we share our experience, but at the same time, you can see that's not so easy for the financial sector to change. Altogether, 150,000 clients here, but the whole group has 517,000 customers, more than 500,000 people connected to the community of Triodos Bank. I think that's quite a good result altogether. What I would like to give you a little bit bigger picture in what sort of environment is Triodos operating, what sort of context, social context we are operating in. And it is quite interesting to see that 5 years after the financial crisis started with Lehman Brothers, the investment bank in the US, September 2008, it's good to reflect a little bit on what has that done to us, to Triodos, to the banking sector, to society. And what the Chinese say, never waste a good crisis. I think we should look at that. Did we waste this crisis? Did we learn from it? Or is it just business as usual? What did the politicians do? What did the bankers do? What did the supervisors do? What did actually economists do in the last 5 years to analyze, to get a better picture of what is behind this financial crisis? And is it just an incident, or is it a reflection of something much more structural? If you look back in the last 5 years, that you see some good ideas have come up in the first year or so after 2008. Should we not split banks into investment banks and retail banks, saving and loan banks, banks who serve the real economy? Interesting enough, after 5 years, you don't hear much about that idea anymore. It has been disappeared. Bankers didn't like it. Politicians couldn't deal with it. It's not really there anymore. Interesting. What you do see, what has been very successful, is more regulation. Interesting for Triodos was in the first years after 2008, we survived the crisis quite well. We were connected to the real economy. We were growing. We were successful. And we were supported by people. And regulation was still doable for Triodos. It's needed regulation. We don't want to do without it. But in the last year, the last 2013, we have seen that a tsunami of rules have come over us as banks and also over Triodos. So in the last 4 years, regulators in Frankfurt, in Brussels, they have been thinking with their colleagues in the different countries, what do we have to do to regulate the banks in a better way to protect the public from paying again for banks? And that's a very good thing to think about, because there were huge amounts of money going to the banks. But the solution was much more about more rules, more capital. What's not so bad in the end, and Triodos is well capitalized thanks to you. But it was more about rules, more and less about changing the culture of banks, being more focused on the real economy, on the real human questions, on the community questions. And in 2008, 2009, we spoke in different occasions about the banking culture has to change. Today, now and then people speak about a culture, but not so much has changed. Because changing a culture is much more difficult than changing rules. Rules is something you impose on others, but changing a culture is coming from within. It's something you have to do as a community. It's something you have to do together, and you have to be convinced about it. You have to be clear about the role you play in society as a bank and how you want to play it. That culture is immense important in the financial sector. And I think many of our colleagues look at Triodos Bank as an example of a bank who can deal with the rules. We can deal with it. It's not easy, I'm honest with you. At the same time, we maintain our culture very strongly, because that culture is what making Triodos different and making us strong. And it is something what, in the end, the financial sector has to recognize. So, more rules, but not so much change in culture in the sector. And that still makes Triodos unique, this balance. What also hasn't happened is, and many people talked about it, is there should be more diversity in the banking landscape. We get these huge banks here in this country, banks like Santander, but also in other countries, in Germany, Deutsche Bank, in ING is also here, a bank who is far too big for the Netherlands actually, so they have to go to Europe. And you can see these big banks are not sort of split up or smaller. It's still bigger and bigger, and I think there is a real issue there. Is that not a systematic system risk for the society as a whole? And the whole landscape of banks is becoming dominated by these big banks. And they are too big to fail, so governments will always support them. But the diversity of a banking landscape, and where we really actively contribute to that diversity, is quite poor. And as the Global Alliance for Banking on Values, our association of ethical social banks worldwide, Triodos started that in 2009. In that association, we made a real plea for more diversity in the banking landscape. And to be honest, step by step, scientists, regulators start to talk about the ecology of the landscape of banking. And it's interesting that there is made a connection to the ecosystems, who can only survive when there is diversity. And say, well, this is something we should actively also promote for banking. And maybe in the banking union, European Banking Union, diversity becomes a real important topic to look at. And diversity is not only good for risk, avoiding risk, people are quite convinced about that now, but also for the people. We get banks who are much closer to their communities if they're more, if they're smaller, diverser, work together. And many people say, but this is a step back in banking. No, it's not. Modern technology makes it possible that also small banks can cooperate. And even for a small bank like Triodos, we can be a European bank. Where in the past you would say, if you are the bank of a size of Triodos, you cannot go into Europe. You cannot be a European bank. But yes, we can. And that is the modern technology, the modern communication. That's why I think it's not a step back, it's a step forward to understand that a diverse banking landscape, building a healthy ecology of banks in Europe is quite important. So this is the bigger picture in which we operate. We are connected to that. We cannot be on an island. We have to do with all this regulatory impact coming from Brussels, coming from Frankfurt. Although we are still a small bank, we also have to comply with that, and we will do. We are quite convinced we can do. But it is quite a challenge, and Triodos is big enough to deal with it, but still a small bank, and has to grow further to deal with those issues also in the future. So this is about the landscape. So what about Triodos itself? How do we did as a group? How did it work? And I want you to give a few numbers, because you get much more numbers in the presentation of Mikel about how Spain has been doing so successfully. But it's good to have the overall picture as well. And I give you just 5 numbers, and that's it about the group. Most importantly is the lending. Did we grow sufficiently with the lending? Not too much, we would say. It's okay, 8%. We are used to bigger numbers. But in the climate of today, economic recession, a lot of attention to regulation to implement regulation. It's quite an interesting number. As I said before, most banks are reducing their loan portfolio. We were able to increase it to serve the real economy, to serve sustainable development. Total assets under management grew at 20%. That is the bank. It's about 6 billion in the bank. And it's also in the investment funds. Investment funds who are mainly in the Netherlands and Belgium and have grown quite a lot. Also some private banking activities in the Netherlands and Belgium. In total, 9.6 billion. Net profit increased as well. What is in today's environment quite a good achievement, we would say. We are quite happy with that. Grew with 14%. Very important, the number of clients grew with 18%. We're reaching more people, and to be honest, we could even reach more people than this number. But we want to grow in a more organic way and not push, get a lot of money in, and cannot all transform that money into loans. We have to balance savings and loans as well. And what you see today in the whole group, that a lot of people come to Triodos, put their savings with us, but it's not so easy for us to put all those savings into loans because it's so much money coming in. And we want to do that in a very responsible way and in a sustainable way. And growing a loan portfolio fast is a real risk, so we have to be careful there. That is a real banking challenge we see, how to balance savings and loans. And of course, the number of co-workers grew as well, with 16%. We are now more than 900 people together in the 6 countries, I have to say. We operate in very small operation in France, only 4 people, but the main branches are in Spain, are in Belgium, and are in the Netherlands, and also the UK is already growing quite well. So this is a little bit the picture of Triodos. Healthy growth, can be very happy with the results, and a strong base for further growth into the future. Now, one step closer to you as depository receipt holders, holders of our shares, and then you see also the value of this stock, of your stock in Triodos, has increased in value step by step. Very sustainable, very stable. That is a typical feature of Triodos. We are not going with huge pluses and huge minuses. We are a stable grower. So you can see here the value of the stock since 2000 is going step by step through the crisis, and we're making that possible. You also have to realize that part of that value creation, that profit, is going into dividends, so you will not see it in the value, but what we keep in the bank is something what creates more value in the stock. And we are now at 77 and we're at 64 in 2000. If you compare that to other banks in the last 14 years, you see that we have done much better. Most banks have come down a lot, half or even a quarter of their original value in the late 90s. So in that sense, if you have been with us for such a long time, you did quite a good investment, I may say. So that is about the Triodos certificates. Then a few remarks per countries. I will end with Spain, say a few things there, but I want to say a few things about the different countries. In Belgium, we had a very good year, a very stable growth, slightly less than Spain, but the financial results, the net profit was very good. It was the highest in the whole bank, and they're really able to develop the market quite well. And you have to realize in Belgium we only have actually savings and loans. A very simple model. We are considering the current account in Belgium to make it a full bank like we are here in Spain, but that's still a step to be made in Belgium. In the UK, not an easy environment for a bank. We had stable growth. We managed throughout the crisis also there, and very low interest rates to create a good result, but not as much growth as in the other parts of the bank, but a stable growth. Germany, which still a very new branch, startup, had to take some losses last year. We have to be very transparent about that. Always with a bank, if you start a bank, and we started it in 2011, 2010, you can see after 3-4 years the first losses come in. You have done some quick decisions and then you see, we should have done it in a different way. And there's always a process. We have seen that in the other branches as well. And the hit for Germany was last year. But we are very confident that next year, in 2015, they will reach break even and also have a successful growth. As I said before, in France, we have not a real full branch. We have 4 people in a small office in Paris. They doing loans on behalf of the Belgium office and preparing a branch for the future. In the Netherlands, there was substantial growth in savings, a real surplus in savings, but not so easy economic climate to grant loans. So in that sense, there is an imbalance in the Netherlands between savings and loans, and we have to work on that, and we work very hard on that. About Spain, I don't want to say much about Spain, but I want to use this moment to honor our colleague who is not anymore here, Esteban Barroso, who has been building this bank here in Spain with all his heart, all his effort. He started 14 years ago. The bank is here 10 years, but he started already 14 years before. A man with a vision, an inspirational man, not only for Spain, for the whole group, and also a very good bank manager. He really knows how to build a bank. And we are extremely grateful what he did to us. For personal reasons, and that's sometimes what you see with entrepreneurs, he decided, this is my time now to go for new challenges. But he left us here with a very healthy bank, for a very good operation. And then the question is how to continue. And then it's a very good experience to see there is a strong team in Spain, a team what has been with Esteban in the last 10 years, and we're completely able to continue the operations here. Stable, went very smoothly, so we are very happy about it. And we appointed Miquel and Juan Antonio for the time being as the managing directors, and that works quite well. So we're very happy how that transition went, and it's always a moment of truth if one of the pioneers, one of the key pioneers is leaving an organization, leaving the bank. But we feel we did it in a very good way, and we're very confident that we can build on what Esteban has made here in Spain possible, to build on that for the next 10, 20 years and grow it into a very healthy, further healthy operation. So a lot of thanks to Esteban, and you have been informed about it, so you knew about it, but it's important here also to mention him, because without him, probably this bank would not be here. So he is really right from the beginning a strong initiative taker. So thanks very much, Esteban, although he is not here, but he will certainly hear what we say about this. Then for the coming years, a few thoughts for the coming years. We are now a mid-sized bank. Our regulator said in the beginning of 2013, you're a mid-sized bank, you're not a small bank anymore, and we are going to watch you more carefully, what you're doing, because you become more of a risk for society if you don't do things well. So we had a lot to deal with that new approach of our regulator, but we deal with that. The growth will be for the future slightly less than the 20–30% we had in the past. We're also dealing with bigger numbers, so we think that it's more between 5 and 15%, and have to deal with that growth percentage. But I think we can have a very healthy growth with that percentages. We have to diversify our loan portfolio. You know, particularly also in Spain, we have been very successful in renewable energy. A big part of our balance sheet, 33–34% is renewable energy, and a bank has to diversify. It's for risk reasons. We don't want only to be a renewable energy bank. We want to do other things as well. So we will diversify. Miquel will talk about it as well. And we want to be even stronger the bank of our sectors. How can we be closer to our sectors? How can we work with organic farming, with healthcare initiatives, but also with working with sustainable mortgages, so being a better bank even for our private customers. If they want to have a sustainable mortgage, can we help them? We didn't do that in the past, we will do that in the future, and this is group-wide. I would like to close with a few remarks on the structure of the bank, and that will come back later when we talk about the SAT, and Josephine will go into that as the chair of the SAT. The SAT is the trust who owns the shares on your behalf in the bank. When you look back and look what the founders in 1980, when the bank was founded, thought about why to create this bank in the Netherlands. They didn't think then about a European bank. That came later. But what was the essence of the bank? They said to me, and I have been there right in the beginning, say, it is to deal with money in a conscious way. And that was completely new in 1980. Today, after the crisis, we can say how important it is that every one of us deals more consciously with money. What is our money doing in society? How is our responsibility for that? They also said that we want to support an economy who is based on cooperation, working together and not just competition. That was another. And today, young people talk about sharing, not about competition. What is very interesting. And the new generation picks those ideas up, and we are very happy that that is coming. Sustainability, taking care of the environment. In 1980, it was a luxury thing. People thought that only when you have money. Today, sustainability is a key factor in the economic development. Even big companies today realize that sustainability has to be part of their business model. I think although things come back, they are still today important, and we are very inspired to work with those ideas. But you see, when a good idea started with a good sort of future-looking perspective, things can become really big and interesting and successful. But Triodos Bank is also still in an open market, and we want to protect our identity. What we want to do, we want to protect and support it. So we have created a forum in 1980 already where we protect the mission of the bank. And in these meetings, we always would like to share with you and to sort of discuss with you if it's clear how it works. You see on the right side, the board of SAAT, they own 100% of the shares of the bank, and they formally have to approve changes, articles of association, board remuneration, all those important aspects what a shareholder does. But also, and that's maybe the informal side, is the dialogue about the mission. How can the bank safeguard the mission? But also safeguard your economic interests, because it's not just us doing nice things, it also has to be a banking business. The interest of you as depository resale holders is part of the interest of the board of SAAT, and they discussed that with us and the supervisory board. And last but not least, to ensure the independence of Triodos Bank. Through our structure, nobody can come and say, I will buy Triodos Bank and now you do what I want you to do. And we are quite attractive for some parties in the market, but we want to protect us here. Say, no, we are for the people, we want to be owned by people, and those people have come to us because of the mission. That is the reason where we're there. So this is one part of the discussion between the shareholder and the bank. Then the other part is, and now you see the board of SAAT at the left, how does SAAT receive its capital to invest in the bank? And that's provided by you, the depository receipt holders, one-to-one. And there is also an annual meeting. I mean, this is sort of informal meeting with you, but in 2 weeks' time there is the formal depository receipt holders meeting in the Netherlands, where actually those people appoint the board of SAAT, saying, well, you are going to represent my interests in dealing with the management and the supervisory board of Triodos Bank. If we want to change any arrangements with the depository receipt holders, they have to approve that literally one by one. But at the same time, it's not just about the formal governance. There is also a engaging element. We call it engaging. That is, we want to know from you as management, as supervisory board and board of SAAT, what you think is important for the bank, how we want to grow, in what areas we want to grow, what is important for you. That dialogue has to take place continuously and has to be intensified, I think, in the future. Only banks like Triodos Bank can exist when you have an active dialogue with you as depository receipt holders. So I think these are important structures who protect Triodos Bank, and I will not go into it too deep. Josephine will explain some of further aspects because she is responsible with her board for that aspect. You see the people who are in the board on the left, on the right, and you see that's an international board. There is also a representative person from Spain. Not only looking at Spain, but looking at the whole, but we want to have an international board in the SAAT. And we also have an international supervisory board. That makes Triodos Bank a European bank. To conclude, I think we are ready and fit for the future. We have some real serious challenges in dealing with this regulatory environment, what comes over us, but we can do it. We have highly motivated co-workers. We have no problem to find professional staff in all the countries we are in. People love to work for Triodos. They feel this is something, if I want to be a banker, I want to be a banker in Triodos Bank. We have a growing number of people who want to deal with their money more consciously and want to become a customer. And the sectors Triodos is connected to are also the sectors of the future. It's very clear in many surveys that sustainability, inclusive economic approaches are the future and not the sort of the single-minded things we have seen so far. So thank you very much for your support again in the last years, and we hope we can give you more good news in the coming years. Thanks a lot.